The Galactic Council had existed for 12 million years. In that time, they had seen empires rise and fall like waves on an endless ocean. They had watched stars die and new ones be born. They had recorded the extinction of over 40,000 sentient species and the emergence of perhaps half that number. Through it all, the Council kept records. They observed. They maintained order where they could, but they never interfered too deeply in the affairs of younger races. Ambassador Threlvin stood before the great viewing window of the Council station, his 4 arms clasped behind his back as he watched the pale blue dot that humans called Earth. His species, the Vorath, had been members of the Council for 3 million years. They had seen much in that time, but nothing had prepared them for humanity. "You seem troubled," said a voice behind him. Threlvin turned to find Elder Morax floating nearby. The crystalline being was ancient even by Council standards, their body a collection of floating geometric shapes that hummed with contained energy. "I am trying to understand them," Threlvin admitted. "The humans. We have studied them for 2 of their centuries now. We have compiled data on their biology, their history, their technology. But there is something about them that our analysis cannot capture." "Ah," Morax chimed, the sound like distant bells. "You speak of what they call hope." "Yes, I have read their definition of it. The expectation of positive outcomes, the belief that things will improve. But this definition seems inadequate. Every species has some form of optimism bias. It is a common evolutionary trait, yet with humans it appears to be something else entirely." Morax drifted closer to the window. "I have observed many species, Ambassador. The Vrel of Sector 7 had optimism. The Krathborn were confident in their future. The singing peoples of the nebula believed in better days to come. All of them are gone now, extinct or transformed beyond recognition. Their optimism did not save them." "Then what makes human hope different?" The elder was silent for a long moment. "I do not know yet, but I believe we are about to find out." On Earth, in a small apartment in a city called Mumbai, a young woman named Priya Sharma was preparing for the most important day of her life. She had been selected to join the first human delegation to the Galactic Council. Out of 8 billion people, only 500 had been chosen. She was one of them. Her grandmother sat on the bed, watching her pack with tired but proud eyes. "You will be far from home," her grandmother said in Hindi. "Farther than any of our ancestors could have dreamed." "I know, Nanny, but I have to go. They chose me for a reason." "What reason?" Priya paused. She had asked herself this question many times since receiving the notification. She was not a politician or a scientist or a soldier. She was a social worker who spent her days helping refugees and displaced families. Why would the Council want someone like her? "I do not know," she admitted, "but I have hope that I will find out." Her grandmother smiled. It was a smile that held decades of hardship within it. Priya knew her grandmother's story: the partition, the poverty, the loss of 2 children to disease before vaccines became available, the years of struggle to keep the family together. And yet, somehow, through all of it, her grandmother had never stopped believing that tomorrow could be better. "That is the correct answer," her grandmother said. "Now go and take our hope with you." The human delegation gathered at the launch site in Kenya. 500 people from every nation on Earth, scientists and artists, teachers and farmers, doctors and construction workers, politicians and poets. They were not the most powerful or the most intelligent humans. They were simply the most representative sample that humanity could offer. Dr. James Chen, a historian from Canada, found himself standing next to Priya as they waited to board the transport vessel. "Are you nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," she admitted with a small laugh. "You?" "Same, but also excited. This is the moment our species has been waiting for, first contact with galactic civilization." "Actually," said a voice nearby, "that is not entirely accurate." They turned to find a tall woman with silver hair and keen eyes. She introduced herself as Maria Santos, a linguist from Brazil. The Voreth made first contact with us nearly 200 years ago, Maria explained. They have been observing us ever since. We are only now being invited to join the council because they have determined we are not a threat. That does not sound like a warm welcome, James observed. It is not meant to be. From what I understand, the council is deeply cautious about new species. Most young civilizations destroy themselves before they can reach the stars. The few that survive often become aggressive and expansionist. The Council has fought many wars against such species. They have no desire to fight another. Priya listened to this with growing concern. Then why invite us at all? Maria shrugged. That is the question, is it not? Perhaps they are curious. Perhaps they see something in us that they do not see in other species. Or perhaps they simply want to keep us close so they can watch us more carefully. The transport vessel was unlike anything humans had ever built. It was grown rather than constructed, a living ship that breathed and pulsed with organic rhythms. The human delegates entered through an opening that seemed to dilate like an eye, and found themselves in a vast chamber filled with soft light and gentle humming sounds. A Voreth guide was waiting for them. Her name, she explained through a translation device, was Kiranath. She was what humans might call a cultural attaché. Welcome to the vessel, gentle thought, she said. The journey to the council station will take approximately 3 of your weeks. During this time, we will prepare you for what you will encounter. Many of the concepts and beings you will meet are beyond your current understanding. This is not an insult. It is simply a fact. The galaxy is very old and humanity is very young. We learn quickly, said a delegate from Nigeria, a man named Obira who was a teacher by profession. Kiranath regarded him with her 4 eyes. Yes, we have noticed this about your species. You are remarkably adaptable. It is one of the reasons you have been invited. What are the other reasons? Priya asked. The Voreth was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, there was something in her voice that might have been uncertainty. That is what we are hopping to discover. The journey through space was strange and wonderful. The human delegates spent their days learning about the galaxy they were joining. There were over 12,000 species in the Galactic Council, ranging from beings of pure energy to creatures that lived in the hearts of stars. The rules that governed council space were complex and ancient, written by minds that had been thinking about governance for millions of years. But Priya noticed something as she studied, something that troubled her. There is no art, she said one evening to James and Maria. They had become close during the voyage, finding comfort in each other's company amid so much strangeness. What do you mean? James asked. In all these records, all these histories, I see technology and politics and war. I see trade agreements and territorial disputes, but I do not see art. I do not see music or stories or paintings. I do not see anything that exists simply because it is beautiful. Maria nodded slowly. I noticed that too. When I asked Kiranath about it, she seemed confused by the question. She said that most species outgrow such things once they reach a certain level of development. Outgrow beauty, James sounded incredulous. How is that possible? I think, Priya said carefully, that this might be why we are here. Not because we are strong or smart or useful, but because we have something they have lost. And what is that? Maria asked. Priya looked out the window at the stars streaming past. Somewhere among them, her grandmother was looking up at the same sky, waiting for her return. Hope, she said, we have hope. The council station was larger than most planets. It hung in the void between galaxies, a construct of such immense scale that the human mind could barely comprehend it. Millions of ships came and went every day, carrying beings from across the known universe. Trade flowed through its ports. Diplomacy was conducted in its halls. And in its deepest chambers, decisions were made that affected the lives of trillions of sentient beings. Ambassador Threlvin waited at the main docking bay as the human vessel arrived. He had requested this duty specifically. After 2 centuries of observation, he wanted to be the first council member to officially greet humanity face to face. The delegates emerged in a long line, blinking in the strange light of the station. They were smaller than Threlvin had expected, softer. They moved with a cautious uncertainty that spoke of their unfamiliarity with this environment. But there was something else in their movements too, an eagerness, a curiosity. They looked around at the alien wonders surrounding them not with fear but with wonder. One of them, a young woman with dark skin and bright eyes, stepped forward from the group. She seemed to be looking for someone to speak to, and when her gaze found Threlvin, she walked directly toward him without hesitation. "Hello," she said through her translation device. "My name is Priya Sharma. Thank you for welcoming us." Threlvin found himself taken aback by her directness. Most young species were timid when first encountering the council. They deferred and submitted and tried to make themselves seem as unthreatening as possible. This human simply introduced herself as if they were equals. "I am Ambassador Threlvin of the Vorath," he replied. "I have been assigned to oversee humanity's integration into council affairs." "Integration," Priya repeated. "That is an interesting word. It suggests that we will become part of something larger than ourselves." "That is the hope," Threlvin said, then paused. He had used that word without thinking. Hope. It seemed to follow these humans wherever they went. "Ambassador," Priya said, "may I ask you something?" "You may." In all the materials we were given to study, there was no mention of what the Council hopes to achieve. There were rules and regulations and histories, but there was no vision of the future, no dream of what the galaxy could become. Is there a reason for that? Threlvin felt something stir within him. It was an unfamiliar sensation, like a muscle that had not been used in a very long time. "The Council exists to maintain stability," he said carefully, "to prevent conflict and ensure the survival of member species. We do not engage in speculation about what might be. We concern ourselves only with what is." "That sounds lonely," Priya said. It was such a simple observation, such a human thing to say, and yet it struck Threlvin with unexpected force. He had served the Council for over 5,000 years. In that time, he had witnessed countless negotiations and treaties and political maneuvers, but he could not remember the last time anyone had asked him how he felt about any of it. "Perhaps it is," he admitted. "I had not considered it in those terms." Over the following weeks, the human delegates were introduced to the various aspects of council life. They met with representatives of dozens of species. They toured the station's facilities. They attended lectures on galactic law and custom, and throughout it all, they asked questions. So many questions. Elder Marax observed this with growing interest. The humans wanted to know everything, not just the facts and figures, but the reasons behind them. Why did the Council form? What did it hope to accomplish? What had it learned in 12 million years of existence? What did it fear? What did it dream? That last question had caused considerable confusion among the Council members. Dreams were not something they discussed. Dreams were private matters if they existed at all. To speak of them openly seemed almost indecent. But the humans spoke of their dreams freely. They shared stories of their past, of the long struggle from caves to stars. They talked about the wars they had fought and the peace they had made. They spoke of their religions and philosophies, their art and music, their loves and losses. They held nothing back. "They are remarkably vulnerable," Marax observed to Threlvin one day. "They share their weaknesses as freely as their strengths. Do they not understand that such openness can be exploited?" "I believe they understand it perfectly," Threlvin replied. "But they choose to be open anyway. It is part of what they call hope, the belief that honesty will be met with honesty, that trust will beget trust." That seems naive. Perhaps, but consider this. In the short time they have been here, they have formed more genuine connections with other species than most civilizations achieve in centuries. The Emril have invited them to their homeworld. The singing peoples have offered to share their music. Even the Draktor, who have not spoken to outsiders in 10,000 years, have expressed interest in meeting them. Morax hummed thoughtfully, all because they are willing to be vulnerable. All because they are willing to hope. They approach every interaction with the belief that it will lead to something good, and somehow that belief seems to make it so. In a small observation room overlooking the main gathering hall, Priya sat with a being called Zel-7. Zel-7 was the last survivor of a species called the Primarch. They were ancient beyond measure, their body more machine than organic now, sustained by technologies that even the Council did not fully understand. "You are dying," Priya said gently. "Yes," Zel-7 replied. "I have been dying for a very long time. My species was one of the founders of the Council. We built much of what you see around you, but we could not build immortality. One by one my people faded. Now only I remain." "That must be lonely." "It is, but I have grown accustomed to loneliness. It is simply the state of existence." Priya shook her head. "I do not believe that. I think loneliness is a call for connection. It is the soul saying that it needs others." Zel-7 regarded her with sensors that glowed faintly in the dim light. "Your species speaks often of souls. We never developed such a concept. What is a soul?" "I am not sure I can explain it properly, but I think it is the part of us that hopes, the part that believes in something beyond what we can see and measure, the part that refuses to accept that existence is meaningless." "And you believe this part exists?" "I know it exists. I feel it every day. When I look at the stars and wonder what is out there. When I help someone who is suffering and see them smile again. When I think of my grandmother and know that she is thinking of me too, even across all this distance." Zel-7 was silent for a long time. When they spoke again, their voice was different, softer, almost wondering. "I had forgotten what it felt like to wonder, to believe that there might be something more. I had accepted that all things end, that nothing truly matters in the long run. But you speak of meaning as if it is real, as if it can be created simply by believing in it." "It can be," Priya said. "That is what hope is. It is not a prediction of the future. It is not a guarantee that things will get better. It is a choice. A decision to act as if meaning exists, even when evidence suggests otherwise. And somehow in making that choice, we create the very meaning we are looking for." "That is the most human thing I have ever heard," Zel-7 said. "Thank you," Priya replied. "I think that might be the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me." Word spread through the council station like fire through dry grass. The humans had something new, something that the galaxy had not seen in a very long time. They called it hope. At first, many dismissed it as a primitive concept, a psychological defense mechanism that young species developed to cope with the harsh realities of existence. The universe was vast and cold and indifferent. Entropy would claim all things eventually. What good was hope in the face of such absolute truth? But the more the council members interacted with humans, the more they began to question their assumptions. A delegation from the Void Walkers, beings who existed between dimensions, came to speak with the human representatives. The Void Walkers had not visited the council in over 1,000,000 years. They claimed that physical reality held nothing of interest for them anymore. "We have seen the beginning of this universe," their leader said, their form flickering in and out of visibility. "We have seen its end. All things that exist between are simply ripples in an ocean that will eventually go still. Why do you persist in caring about what happens?" Dr. James Chen stepped forward. He had been preparing for this moment, studying everything he could find about the Void Walkers and their philosophy. "You say you have seen the end of the universe," he said, "but have you seen what comes after?" The Void Walker paused. After, there is nothing after, that is the nature of an ending. Are you certain? In our history, we once believed that the earth was the center of everything. Then we believed that the sun was the center. Then we believed that our galaxy was all there was. Every time we thought we understood the limits of existence, we discovered we were wrong. Why should the end of this universe be any different? Because we have seen it. You have seen what you expected to see, but expectations shape perception. If you believe that endings are absolute, then absolute endings are all you will find. But what if you looked with different eyes? What if you hoped for something more? The Void Walker flickered violently. Hope. You speak of hope to beings who have transcended time itself. I speak of hope to beings who have forgotten what it means to be surprised, what it means to discover something truly new. You say you have seen everything, but have you ever met a species like us? Have you ever encountered beings who create meaning simply by believing it exists? There was a long silence. Finally, the Void Walker spoke again, and there was something different in their voice, something that might have been curiosity. No, we have not. You are unexpected. Then perhaps, James said with a small smile, the universe still has some surprises left for you. The Void Walkers departed shortly after, but they left with a promise to return. They wanted to study these humans more closely. They wanted to understand how creatures of such limited existence could contain such unlimited capacity for belief. Obira, the teacher from Nigeria, found himself surrounded by young beings from a dozen different species. They had heard about the humans and their strange concept of hope, and they wanted to learn more. Hope is like a seed, Obira explained, using the simple language of a man who had spent his life making complex things understandable. When you plant a seed, you do not know if it will grow. The soil might be bad. The weather might be wrong. Animals might eat it before it has a chance. But you plant it anyway because you believe in what it could become. But what if it does not grow? Asked the young Emril, her tentacles writhing with uncertainty. What if all your effort is wasted? Then you plant another seed, and another, and another. You keep planting until something grows, and when something finally does grow, you share its fruit with others so they can plant seeds of their own. That is how hope spreads, not through certainty but through persistence. It sounds exhausting, the young Emril said. Obira laughed. It is, but it is also the only thing that makes life worth living. Without hope, we would never try anything new. We would never take risks or face challenges or grow beyond what we already are. Hope is what pushes us forward. It is the engine of all progress. Maria Santos was conducting linguistic research in the station's vast library when she made a surprising discovery. The Council's archives contained records of a concept very similar to hope. It had existed among the founding species millions of years ago. It was called the bright expectation, she told Priya and James later that evening. From what I can tell, it was a widespread philosophy that emphasized optimism, creativity, and the pursuit of meaning. The early council was built on its principles. What happened to it? Priya asked. It faded. As the council grew older and larger, it became more focused on stability and less on growth. The bright expectation was seen as inefficient. It led to too many failed experiments, too many wasted resources. Eventually, it was replaced by what they call the steady path, a philosophy of caution, conservation, and acceptance of limits. They gave up hope, James said quietly. Essentially, yes. And looking at the historical records, that is when things began to change. The number of new inventions dropped. The rate of cultural innovation slowed. Species that had once been dynamic and creative became static and predictable. The galaxy did not collapse, but it stopped growing. Priya stood and walked to the window. Outside, the vast bulk of the station stretched away into darkness. Millions of beings went about their daily lives, following patterns that had been established millions of years ago. They are not dead, she said, but they are not really alive either. They are just existing, waiting for an end that they believe is inevitable. "And we are here to change that," James asked. Priya turned to face her friends. There was a light in her eyes that had not been there before, a determination that came from somewhere deep within her. "We are here to remind them what they have forgotten. We are here to give them back their hope." The Grand Assembly of the Galactic Council met once every 1,000 years. It was the only time when all 12,000 member species came together in one place. Decisions made at the Grand Assembly shaped the course of galactic civilization for centuries to come. The humans had arrived just 6 months before the assembly. Some said it was coincidence. Others said it was destiny. Ambassador Threlvin suspected it was something in between. "You want to address the assembly," he said, looking at Priya with all 4 of his eyes. "Do you understand what that means?" "I understand that it is an opportunity that may never come again. 12,000 species, all in one place, all listening. When will we ever have another chance like this?" "The assembly is for matters of galactic importance, trade agreements, territorial disputes, policy changes. What would you even say?" Priya smiled. "I would tell them a story." "A story?" "Yes. My grandmother used to tell me stories when I was a child. Stories about our ancestors, about the struggles they faced and how they overcame them. Stories about hope. I think the galaxy needs to hear a story like that." Threlvin was silent for a long moment. In 5,000 years of service, he had never heard anyone propose addressing the assembly with a story. It was unprecedented. It was absurd. It was exactly what he would have expected from a human. "I will make the request," he said, "but I cannot promise they will agree." The debate in the council's inner chambers was fierce. Many representatives argued that allowing a species so young and unproven to address the assembly would set a dangerous precedent. Others pointed out that the humans had already caused significant disruption to the established order. Giving them such a prominent platform could only make things worse. But Elder Marek spoke in favor of the request. "We have observed these humans for 2 centuries, Marek said, their crystalline form pulsing with light. "We have studied them and analyzed them and tried to understand them, but we have not truly listened to them. Perhaps it is time we did." "What could they possibly tell us that we do not already know?" demanded the representative of the Draktor. "We have existed for millions of years. We have seen civilizations rise and fall. What wisdom could these children offer us?" "The wisdom of the young is not the same as the wisdom of the old," Marek replied. "We know much, but perhaps there are things we have forgotten, things that only those who have not yet learned to despair can teach us." The vote was close, but in the end, the request was granted. Priya Sharma would be allowed to address the Grand Assembly. She would have 30 minutes to say whatever she wanted to say. The night before the assembly, Priya sat alone in her quarters. She had been writing and rewriting her speech for weeks, but nothing felt right. Every draft seemed too small, too limited. How could she capture something as vast and essential as hope in mere words? There was a knock at her door. She opened it to find Zel 7 standing in the corridor. "May I come in?" the ancient being asked. Priya stepped aside. Zel 7 moved slowly, their mechanical body humming with the effort of maintaining life. "I wanted to thank you," Zel 7 said. "Thank me for what?" "For giving me something I thought I had lost forever. For the past several months since our conversation I have been different. I find myself wondering about things, hopping for things. It is a strange sensation after so many years of emptiness." "I am glad," Priya said, "but I did not do anything, I just talked to you. You shared your hope with me. That is not nothing, that is everything, and tomorrow you will share it with the entire galaxy." Priya felt a flutter of anxiety in her chest. What if I fail? What if they do not understand? What if I say the wrong things and make everything worse? Zel 7 reached out with a mechanical limb and touched her shoulder gently. It was an unexpectedly human gesture. You will not fail, they said, because hope is not about success or failure. It is about trying. It is about believing that the effort matters, even when you cannot see the outcome. Whatever happens tomorrow, you will have tried, and that is enough. Priya felt tears pricking at her eyes. How did you become so wise? I had a good teacher, Zel7 said. A young human who reminded me that wisdom is not something you achieve. It is something you practice, every day, with every choice, with every act of hope. The Grand Assembly Hall was the largest enclosed space Priya had ever seen. It stretched away in all directions, filled with representatives from every species in the council. Beings of every shape and size and composition, creatures of flesh and metal and energy and void, all of them watching, all of them waiting. Priya walked to the central platform. Her legs felt weak. Her heart was pounding, but she took a deep breath and thought of her grandmother, of all the stories she had heard as a child, of all the hope that had been passed down through generations. She began to speak. My name is Priya Sharma. I come from a planet called Earth, a small world orbiting a medium-sized star in an unremarkable galaxy. By your standards, my species is young. We have existed for only a few 100,000 years. We have been in space for less than a century. We know almost nothing about the universe compared to what you know. She paused, looking out at the vast assembly. But we know something that you have forgotten, something that you lost a long time ago, something that we call hope. A murmur went through the crowd. Priya continued. Hope is not optimism. It is not the belief that things will definitely get better. Hope is something much stranger and much more powerful than that. Hope is the choice to act as if meaning exists, even when everything tells you it does not. She told them about her grandmother, about the partition and the poverty and the loss, about the years of struggle and the moments of despair, about the choice, made again and again, to believe that tomorrow could be better. My grandmother did not know if things would improve. She had no guarantees. She had every reason to give up, to accept that suffering was simply the nature of existence. But she chose to hope instead. And because she hoped, she kept trying. And because she kept trying, things eventually did get better. Not because the universe rewarded her hope, but because her hope made her strong enough to keep working until she created the change she wanted to see. Priya spoke about human history, about the wars and the plagues and the disasters, about the moments when extinction seemed certain and survival seemed impossible, about the choices, made again and again, to refuse despair. We have destroyed so much. We have caused so much suffering. We are not a perfect species. We are not even a particularly good one. But we have one thing that has carried us through every darkness. We have hope. And we have learned that hope is not a feeling. It is a practice. It is something you do, not something you have. And like all practices, it can be taught. It can be shared. It can be spread from one being to another until it covers the entire galaxy. She looked directly at Elder Marax, whose crystalline form was shining with an intensity she had not seen before. You have forgotten how to hope. Somewhere in your long history, you decided that hope was inefficient, that it led to too many failures, too many disappointments. You chose certainty over possibility, safety over growth, and in doing so, you created a galaxy that is stable but stagnant, a galaxy that will never collapse but will never truly flourish. Her voice grew stronger. We offer you something different. We offer you our hope, not because we are wise or powerful or important, but because hope is not something you hoard. It is something you share. The more you give away, the more you have, and we have enough to spare, enough for every species, enough for every being, enough to light the way through whatever darkness lies ahead. Priya spread her arms wide. The universe may be vast and cold and indifferent. Entropy may claim all things in the end, but between now and then there is time. Time to create meaning, time to build connections, time to love and learn and grow, time to hope. And hope makes all the difference, not because it changes the facts, but because it changes us. It makes us brave enough to face the facts and still choose to act, still choose to care, still choose to believe that what we do matters. She lowered her arms and spoke her final words. We are humanity. We are young and foolish and full of flaws, but we have hope. And we give it to you freely. Take it. Use it. Pass it on. Let it spread through every corner of this galaxy until there is no being, no matter how ancient or how strange, who does not know what it feels like to believe in something better. That is our gift to you. That is our promise. That is our hope. The silence that followed was absolute. Priya stood alone on the platform, her heart racing, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. Then Elder Morax began to shine. Their crystalline form blazed with light, brighter than Priya had ever seen. And as they shone, they made a sound that the translation device struggled to render. It was something between a song and a cry, something ancient and powerful that had not been heard in millions of years. It was the sound of hope awakening. Other beings began to join in. The Void Walkers flickered into visibility, their forms dancing with new patterns. The Emril unfurled their tentacles and added their own voices to the chorus. The Draktor, who had not spoken to outsiders in 10,000 years, stepped forward and added their rumbling tones to the growing harmony. Species after species joined in. The sound grew and grew until it filled the entire assembly hall, until it spilled out into the station beyond, until it echoed through the void between galaxies. The galaxy was singing. For the first time in millions of years, it was singing with hope. In the years that followed, everything changed. The humans spread across the galaxy like seeds carried on the wind. Wherever they went, they brought their strange gift with them. They told stories. They shared dreams. They spoke of futures that were not yet written and possibilities that were not yet explored. Ambassador Threlvin watched it all with wonder. The species he had observed for 2 centuries had become something he never expected. Not conquerors, not rulers, not even leaders in any traditional sense. They were something else entirely. They were teachers. They were reminders. They were the carriers of a flame that had nearly gone out. The reports from Sector 7 are remarkable, he told Elder Morax one day. The Vrel have begun creating art again. For the first time in 3 million years, they are making things simply because they are beautiful. Morax hummed with satisfaction. And the Krathborn. They have started a new expansion project, not for resources or territory. They want to find new species, new civilizations, new perspectives. They say they want to be surprised again. The bright expectation returns, Morax said, though perhaps it would be more accurate to say that it never really died. It simply needed to be remembered. On a small colony world in the outer reaches, Priya Sharma sat with a group of young beings from a dozen different species. They had gathered to hear her speak, as so many had in the years since the Grand Assembly. She was older now, her hair touched with gray, her face lined with the marks of a life well lived. "Tell us about hope," one of them asked, a young Voreth barely old enough to have developed all 4 arms. Priya smiled. It was the same question she had been answering for decades now. And yet, each time, she found new ways to explain it. Hope is not something you wait for, she said. It is something you create. Every day, with every choice, you decide whether to hope or to despair. Neither is more rational than the other. Both are responses to the same uncertain universe. But hope makes you act. Hope makes you try. Hope makes you reach out to others and build connections and create meaning. Despair does none of these things. Despair only waits for the end. But what if the end comes anyway? The young Voreth asked. What if all our hopping is for nothing? Then it is for nothing, but at least we will have hoped, at least we will have tried, at least we will have lived, truly lived, instead of simply existing. And who knows? Perhaps our hope will inspire others. Perhaps it will spark something that outlasts us. Perhaps the meaning we create will ripple outward long after we are gone. She looked up at the stars. My grandmother died many years ago, but her hope lives on in me. And now I pass it on to you, and you will pass it on to others, and they will pass it on to others still. That is how hope works. It is not a thing you possess. It is a flame you carry, and the only way to keep it burning is to share it. Far away on the ancient station between galaxies, Zel 7 stood before a new delegation of humans. The last survivor of the Primarch was still dying, still fatting, but they had not stopped hopping. Every day they chose to believe that their existence mattered, that their suffering had meaning, that the end, when it came, would not be an ending but a transformation. "Welcome to the Council," Zel 7 said to the new arrivals. "You come from a remarkable species, a species that gave us back something we thought we had lost forever." "Hope?" one of the humans asked. "Yes, hope, but also something more. You gave us permission to hope. You showed us that it was not foolish or naive or inefficient. You showed us that hope is the most practical thing in the universe, because hope makes us act, and action is the only thing that ever changes anything." The human nodded. "That is what we believe." "I know, and now it is what we believe too, all of us. The entire galaxy, 12,000 species, united not by rules or treaties or fear, but by hope, by the belief that together we can create something better than any of us could create alone." In the Grand Assembly Hall, a new meeting was taking place, not to discuss trade or territory or policy, but to dream. Representatives from every species gathered to share their visions of the future. What could they build? What could they discover? What could they become? The ideas flowed freely. Some were practical, some were fantastical, some were probably impossible, but none of them were dismissed, because impossible was just another word for not yet, and not yet was the beginning of every great achievement. A young human stood to speak. Her name was Maya Chen, the granddaughter of James Chen, who had been part of the first delegation. She had grown up hearing stories of that time, of the moment when humanity offered its hope to the galaxy. "My great-great-grandmother used to say that hope is a seed," Maya said. "You plant it not knowing if it will grow. You tend it not knowing if it will bear fruit, but you plant it anyway because you believe in what it could become." She paused, looking out at the vast assembly. "The seed we planted generations ago has grown into a forest that spans the entire galaxy, and now it is time to plant new seeds, seeds of ideas and dreams and possibilities that we cannot yet imagine. Some will grow, some will not, but we will keep planting, because that is what hope is. That is what hope does. That is what hope makes us." The assembly erupted in sound. Not applause exactly. Something deeper than that. Something that expressed agreement and enthusiasm and commitment in ways that transcended language. On Earth, in a small apartment in a city called Mumbai, an old woman sat watching the stars. She was the great-great-granddaughter of Priya Sharma, and she carried the same hope that had been passed down through 5 generations. Tomorrow she would join a new delegation to the council, not as a representative or a diplomat, as a storyteller, because stories were how hope spread. Stories were how hope survived. She thought of all the beings she would meet, all the worlds she would visit, all the hopes she would share and receive. "Thank you, Nanny," she whispered to the stars. "Thank you for the seeds you planted." Somewhere among those stars, the galaxy continued to hope. It was no longer a dying place, a static place, a place that simply waited for entropy to claim it. It was alive again, growing again, dreaming again. And at the heart of it all, like a flame that could not be extinguished, was the gift that humanity had given. The thing that cost nothing and was worth everything. The thing that anyone could create and anyone could share. Hope. Not a prediction, not a promise, not a guarantee. Just a choice, made again and again, in every moment, by every being, across every corner of the vast and wonderful galaxy. The choice to believe that tomorrow could be better. The choice to act as if meaning exists. The choice to plant seeds not knowing if they will grow. The choice to hope. And in making that choice, to create the very future they hoped for. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. And the galaxy would carry it forward, from star to star and age to age, until the end of time itself. And perhaps even beyond. Because hope once lit never truly dies. It only spreads,